The NFL, like everything in the world, is continuously changing, and the ways to win championships, or the old ways to win championships, are now in a lot of ways just that, the old or classic approach. We now have a newer, modern approach, and a lot of it is building around a young, hotshot quarterback, and within that there are a ton of risks, but as we've seen over the past few years with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, and having been to the AFC Championship game 4 straight times, the risk is certainly worth the reward. And the ways teams build now and the patience they have from an upper management perspective is in a lot of ways similar to the world we have now. GMs and head coaches are continuously given less and less time to rebuild a franchise unless the said franchise is truly awful and the owner gives them usually a 5 to 6 year contract. And think, maybe 10 or 15 years ago for a second, from both where we were as a world and where the NFL was. From a world perspective, I mean, guys, we used to have computer rooms growing up, and then the whole you can't use the house phone while someone's on the internet thing, let alone now where everyone in a college class is having and expected to have a laptop of their own. And in the NFL, if a trade happened back then, say 15 years ago, it was a huge deal, and it was big news that lingered for days. And this wasn't quite 15 years ago, but when the Bears traded for Jay Cutler from Denver, it was historically breaking news because trades like that just didn't happen. But we are in a way more modern now, and it is more than here to stay, and we'll be breaking everything down from an NFL perspective, so without further ado, let's begin. When we say new NFL or modern NFL, if you will, to be clear, what I mean is there's going to be a lot more active GMs than ever before. And in some ways, the NFL is going to, and honestly has, started to look like when you create a Madden league with your friends or even a fantasy football league where everyone trades everyone and there's a lot of shit going on all the time. And to be honest with you guys, I love it. And if you can think of all of the trades involving first round picks back in the early 2010s, of course the immediate thought is RG3, but honestly outside of that, how many can you truly name involving first round picks? There's only one I can think of because it involved my team, and it was the Seahawks trading their 2013 first round pick, and a little more than that because there's always like 4th and 6th swapped and everything, but it was to get then Vikings receiver Percy Harvin. And aside from these two, there weren't many. And to be clear, there is a monumental difference between trades like those and a draft day trade of swapping picks, like a team coming up from pick 15 to pick 10 to get their franchise quarterback, or 12 to 7, or wherever, like the Cardinals and Bills did in 2018, to go up and get their, well, at the time, quarterbacks of the future in Josh Rosen and Josh Allen. But within the past few years, how many stars have been traded? Well, the answer is quite a lot, as off the top of my head, let's start with Khalil Mack to the Bears back in 2018, Jalen Ramsey to the Rams, Jamal Adams to the Seahawks, Odell Beckham to the Browns, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. All of those were prior to 2020, and as we know, there's been a lot of trades since then, and there's a huge reason for that. NFL teams want players that can produce at a high level, and they want them now. And with the Rams winning the Super Bowl this past year, I truly believe this trend will be here for quite a while because they've proven it can work. And with as many trades as we have going on, or that have gone in the past few days or week area, there's a couple I want to highlight. First, Tampa acquiring Shaq Mason for a 5th round pick is absolutely insane. How that happens or why Bill agreed to that trade is beyond me. This is kind of going back to the Madden reference earlier, but it's absurd. It's like using the system that we've all done in franchise mode at least once to benefit your team. And the Amari Cooper trade was more about the financial part than anything, but to acquire a player of his caliber for a 5th round pick to me is also, a little wild. If I were the Jets or Jags, I'd honestly be a little upset we didn't contact Dallas about this trade to acquire a good veteran receiver and a player who would surely help our young quarterback out in the meantime, and a lot at that. Now, I don't dislike what each of those teams have done so far in free agency to assist Trevor and Zach Wilson, but if you're going to agree to that wild deal with Christian Kirk, which yes, I know he won't play all 4 years there, why not go and get a better receiver in Amari in the meantime? But in the NBA, we've seen teams go all in several times for a championship push, and we're starting to see that with NFL teams, where it used to be an approach like we'll draft a quarterback in the first round, then a receiver in the second or even third, instead of giving up a 1 and a future 4 for a player like Stefon Diggs. We'll try and draft a receiver in the second round to get our quarterback a weapon of the future, instead of a consistently proven 1,000-yard receiver. Now, I've made videos before on why the Bills are a blueprint model for how to build a team in today's era, and the way they build around Josh Allen is a large reason why. They go and get Stefon Diggs, and the Vikings got Justin Jefferson in the trade for Diggs, and they're obviously very happy with their pick in the trade, but if the Bills spend that first round pick on a receiver, yes, at the time they could have got Jefferson, but you realize they could have also got Jalen Reagor, N'Keal Harry, and these guys are former second round picks, but Laviska Shenault or KJ Hamler, right? So why not go get that established difference maker for measly isn't the right word, but for a first round pick when you know what the production will be, or at least have a very solid idea of what it will close to be. Now, it's honestly crazy when you think about it that GMs used to value first round picks as high as they did, and that's not to say their value is low, because it's obviously not, but if you go back 2 years and say to any receiver needy team that's close to contending like the Bills were, who were coming off of a wild card appearance that year, here's Stefon Diggs for a first round pick and a future 4 and a future 7th, they would 1,000,000% take that without hesitation. And that trade would obviously have the knowledge of where the pick is within the draft to be clear, which was 22nd overall. The Jags would not give up the number 1 overall pick currently for Stefon Diggs, to be clear. And this fast-paced rebuilding of a team isn't exclusive to just the offensive side of the ball. A lot of the time, people think build around a quarterback means sacrificing everything the franchise has and have a 30th ranked defense just to give your team a shot at winning, and that is simply not the case. Whatever you think of Khalil Mack, like, love, or hate, to acquire him for a 2nd and 6th round pick, to me is 100% worth the risk, and I say that without knowing how it's going to work out. Put him in a defense opposite of Joey Bosa and let those boys go to work. That trade only happens because Justin Herbert is on his rookie contract, because if he's not and he's signed a 4-year, $150, $180 million contract, then it's more than likely not financially possible. And there's no disrespect here intended to Kayvon Thibodeau, Aiden Hutchinson, Jermaine Johnson, or any of the 2022 NFL draft class, but can you tell me with 100% certainty that any of these guys coming out will play at the level Khalil Mack will for this year and next year? The years where the Chargers are pushing for a Super Bowl, and I'd hope some of those guys have more production from a long-term standpoint than what Khalil will have as a Charger, given he is over 30 years old, but would they have the impact he will have this year while LA pushes for that Super Bowl? The answer, at least in my opinion, is no. And LA makes out even better, only giving up a 2nd round pick for him. Now, to be clear, it does not make sense for a team like the New York Jets to call up for a hypothetical, we'll say the Colts, and say, hey guys, would you give us Quentin Nelson for our 10th overall pick and whatever else it would take because of where they are as a franchise? The Jets and the Chargers are at 2 completely different states, as the Jets have had back-to-back top 5 picks, and it wouldn't make sense for them to do that. But for a team like the Raiders, who last night as I record this, traded their top 2 picks to get the best receiver in football in Davante Adams, and the cherry on top of how happy it makes their quarterback in Derek Carr makes a ton of sense. The 2022 NFL draft class comment I said about the edge rushers makes just as much sense with Davante as it did with Khalil. Treylon Burks, Drake London, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, whoever. Will they in 2022 be as productive as Davante Adams? This is, of course, assuming no injuries happen. The answer is no, and there's no shame in that either because Davante has played at a Hall of Fame level over the past 2 years, as in those past 2 years, Tay has 238 receptions, 2,900 yards, and 29 touchdowns. So to give up the top 2 picks they have for this type of talent is an easy trade-off. And the Eagles having 3 first-round picks this year, again, only proves where we are headed as a league. And I've mentioned a lot of the successful NFL trades so far, but there are, of course, a lot of bad ones recently as well. It's naturally going to happen when there's a lot of trades, and with as many trades as we have in today's league. Not every single one will be successful, and teams will do anything to get their franchise quarterback, as we all watched that Bills-Chiefs truly all-time playoff game this past year, and if you know you have to compete with that for a decade, then you're going to have to compete somehow, some way, or at least try. And the Panthers, for example, tried their hand and traded 3 draft picks for Sam Darnold, and Indy attempted the same with Carson Wentz. They thought they were on the fast track to success, and a year later, well, with both teams, that's not the case. But the no trading or maybe a singular trade or two a season days are long gone, and I truly can't wait for the future of the NFL, and even the present, because it is a very, very fun time to be an NFL fan. And that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, now is the time I ask you to please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because it would truly mean the world. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.